Well, hello and welcome to our devotion here today as we're walking through the Ten Commandments in Luther's Small Catechism. We have the fifth commandment today, and this is one where I feel like a lot of times you hear the basis of this commandment. You shall not murder, and you're like, well, I'm good on that one. Haven't murdered anybody. Let me just move on to the next one. But it is about way more than just killing or not killing someone else. So let's read this here. You shall not murder. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not hurt or harm our neighbor in his body, but help and support him in every physical need. There's a lot more going on here, and Jesus even says, as one example in the Sermon on the Mount, if you've called somebody a fool, if you've hated someone in your heart, if you've spoken in a negative way to someone or about someone, you're also guilty of this commandment. This is a commandment where God lifts up the value of human life, the sanctity. That's a term that we use sometimes, the sanctity of human life. But really just lifting up the way that we ought to live in relationship with other people, how we should care for their physical needs. So part of this commandment is certainly about not hurting or harming someone with our words, with our actions, physically, harming them. But also it speaks to, emotional well-being as well. It condemns verbal abuse, psychological abuse, as well as that physical harm, just a whole spectrum of how sinful fallen creatures hurt and harm each other all throughout history. So it tells all these things that you are not to do, ways that you can break the commandment, things that you're supposed to avoid as a follower of Jesus. So that's one thing. And maybe that's easier, but the more difficult calling that this commandment places upon us is to actually see people who are in physical need and to do something about it. So there's all kinds of examples. Again, the beautiful thing about the Catechism is pointing us to scriptural passages, examples of Jesus or other followers of God throughout history. And the one that really stands out to me is the story of the Good Samaritan, where Jesus says, hey, look, there's this guy who's been beaten and bloodied, and he's lying on the side of the road, and other people are just passing him by. They're not the ones who beat him up. They're the ones that robbed him. But even they are breaking this commandment. They are not being a caring neighbor to this man because they're just passing him by while he's in need. And it's the Samaritan who helps him, gets him medical care, and makes sure that he's going to be okay. He's the one who fulfills this commandment of loving and protecting and caring for the physical needs. So that's the thing for us as Christians, as followers of Jesus, as children of God, a God who loves and values life so much that he himself came down and endured physical pain and suffering and death so that we might be saved. As followers of this God, as children of this God, we are called to follow in his footsteps and go out of our way, like the Good Samaritan, like Jesus, to care for the physical needs of people in our community, people that we know about. Now, we're not going to be able to save the whole world's physical needs, but I think the thing for us to discern is what unique ways, maybe for me as an individual or for us as a family or for us as a church, can we respond to God's calling. That might be, feeding the hungry. That might be clothing the naked. That might be providing shelter to the homeless. There are so many ways. Sometimes I feel like there might be so many options that we have for how we can keep the fifth commandment that maybe we get overwhelmed sometimes. It's not like we don't see any need around here. And so for everyone, I think it's trying to, it's praying for eyes to see the needs and for God to give us discernment in our hearts about how maybe we as individuals, families, church, however, may be positioned to reach out and love our neighbor through these ways. So I think this is a more of a positive spin on how to keep the fifth commandment. It's not just like, don't hurt people, don't say bad things to people, but it's how can we love our neighbor in tangible ways through the resources that God has provided for us. And it might look different. There are multiple different ways for a Christian to be faithful to the fifth commandment's calling. But there's a lot in here. Don't just gloss over and be like, well, I haven't murdered anybody, I'm good on this one. Dig deeper and pray to God for him to give you guidance on how to truly care and value life, value the basic needs of this life the way that he does. So that's our reflection on the fifth commandment. We're going to get deeper and deeper here in this, as we go through the rest of the commandments to see, oh man, how does it work here? How can we be faithful neighbors, brothers and sisters to our fellow creatures here? So God's blessings, and we'll see you again.